There we go. All right. So really happy to have a chance to be here with you this evening. And I can see, winter's coming, as much of winter as we get in San Diego, or California, Texas, wherever we are. So it's pretty comfortable and forgiving environment. I've got a lot of colleagues now in Finland and so forth. So they've got 3 hours of sun in the winter and so forth. So we can be grateful for our good conditions. I wanted to dip into a topic I've been thinking about recently. Recently I'd given a couple of these talks on this topic of 8 worldly concerns and how our mental attitudes towards our social circle. And I wanted to springboard off of that into the topic of from the topic of respect, interpersonal respect, to the topic of worship, and just understanding a little bit more about that mind that is so central to religious practices. Worship, I think you could define as an extreme form of respect, or like the ultimate extent of respect, the deepest, most profound respect that people could generate. But then looking at that, what is that mind? Why is that mind why is that mind so central to religious practices? Why religious practice is so historically central to human beings? How should we understand those practices in the modern world and so forth? As usual, one of the things we want to be building respect for is our own peace of mind, our own attention span, our own opportunity to be at peace. Because I think that's often not considered a key priority in our lives and in our work. And that's something that I think, if we take that as a key priority, that we can do whatever we want and go wherever we want, engage in any activity and do anything, but we always have peace of mind as a priority, and respecting our own peace of mind and our own attention span as a priority, it leads to very different behaviors, leads to a very different way of experiencing our world. Okay, so we can begin with, as usual, with some meditation, and then I'll go in and explain this topic of respect more in depth. But so our meditation, this is our opportunity to gather our energy, still our mind. We find a comfortable position, sitting as usual with our back straight but relaxed, that nice balance. We take a deep breath in and out. And then another deep breath, just inviting our body to relax. And then another breath, just asking ourselves, what is important right now? We continue to focus on our breathing, just allowing our mind to gather. When our mind is busy and highly energized, it's very hard for us to focus our attention. So we need to bring our mind into a quieter, more peaceful state, and then our mind, our attention will naturally gather. Our meditation shouldn't be fighting. It should be finding this sweet spot where we are peaceful enough for our mind to be easily controlled and managed, but awake enough to keep our clarity. So as we're focusing on our breathing, this also, in our context, we can be breathing with our entire body, just focusing on the feeling of our entire body, or whatever you're most aware of. Just feel the sensation of your skin, pressure on your body from however you're sitting, heat and cool. These very basic physical sensations, especially the gradual expanding and contracting of our body with each breath. Breath. Breath is moving all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. Our opportunity is to settle in to this sensation, to help to still our mind. And then to generate a warm heart and a mind of gratitude, we can imagine that we are in a beautiful, inspiring, uplifting environment, and all around us is our social network, our social circle, the people who have influenced us, who we influence, our parents, friends, partners, teachers, co-workers, neighbors. We imagine them all around us. But we imagine that they're all peaceful, happy, smiling, and delighted to be engaging in meditation alongside us. And in particular, we try to cultivate a mind of gratitude and humility, recognizing that these are all the people who have enabled us to be here today. Directly or indirectly, these people have made us the person that we are. Without these people, especially our parents, we wouldn't even exist. To begin with, we recall even just one thing that others have done for us that we're grateful for. Build on this as we can recall. And then with our mind of gratitude, we develop a wish to repay the kindness of others, in particular by building our own peace of mind and becoming a beacon of peace in the middle of our social network. We are already at the very center of our own social network, and we can become a radiant source of peace influencing that network. This intention in mind, we develop a wish to listen carefully and take the teachings to heart, to build this inner strength and ability to remain peaceful in all circumstances. And then with this good motivation, we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation. So I'm going to move a little bit briskly through a few related conceptual topics, kind of catching up on some of the themes I'd mentioned before. But summarizing this topic I'd mentioned in past classes, these 8 worldly concerns, this came out of my my thinking for the book that I'm working on, that all our minds, and in fact, in general, all minds, any mind, whatever mind there is, have a couple of basic characteristics. They distinguish things. They identify this and distinguish this from that. And so you sort of make these distinctions to be able to identify or recognize objects. And then we have a certain feeling about them. And that's these are 2 very distinct. The first is called, at least in the Buddhist terminology, the first is called discrimination, being able to tell the difference between this and that. And then the second is called feeling. So discrimination and feeling. So there's a thing, and how do you feel about it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? And feeling itself is like a calculation that we do. And you sort of look at a person, you're like assessing all characteristics. Are they nice? Are they threatening? Are they attractive? Are they unattractive? How are they acting? All these kinds of things. You summarize it all up and you come up with a feeling. Good, bad, neutral, somewhere in them. And so it's very simple, extraordinarily simple. There's a thing, there's a person. How do I feel about them? And you condense all this infinite amount of information, sensory information, memories, and so forth, and you develop this one sense. And how do we feel about something is also is directly connected. It is in fact the same as how much we value something, because we value our own feelings. We value our happiness, short-term and long-term. How much would it be worth to you to always be happy and never suffer? Well, you pay everything you had eventually. If you had a feeling that a certain path could lead to only being happy and never suffering, everything we buy is something that we feel is going to make us happy or solve a problem now or long term. I pay rent in my apartment, so I have a stable place where I can keep all my stuff and not get rained on. And I invest money in this because it reduces suffering and allows me to collect things that make me happy. So value and feeling are directly correlated, and we are we're very concerned about our personal possessions, but we're much more concerned on balance. We're much more concerned about how we fit in our social network. Do people like us? Are we respected? How's our reputation? What can we do to be liked by other people? And we do a lot to be liked by other people. Throughout this whole meditation class, I've been very carefully, choosing my words and my tone of voice, my posture, all to try to give you a pleasant experience so that you will like me. It's always, always on the edge of screwing up, but I'm always trying to hang in there. We do a lot so that other people will admire us, and we curate our reputation and our resume and all these kinds of things to increase our social status. Why? Why is because it's dangerous for a pack animal to be on the edges of the pack. Safest place, if you're a pack animal, would be in the center of the pack, right? How do you be in the center of the pack? Accumulate respect, be respected by others. So it's just a deep natural wish. Now, of course, you get all these pack animals. They're all trying to be in the center. What do you get? You get conflict, scarcity. Not everybody can be in the center. One of us has to be better. This conflict, natural human conflict. And so how do you not have conflict as humans? You have to learn, how do you not be in, we spend the rest of our life trying to answer that question. How do you not be in conflict as human beings? How do you live in a marriage in one small space with another person and not be in conflict? Well, that's your project for the rest of your life. It's always a work in progress. One of the most there's a couple of things that humans naturally do. Humans naturally admire certain other people, and so not only do we want respect, we give respect, and we admire certain people, and those people might be leaders in our community, the head of our company, an author that we admire. They may be a famous rock star. I find that one really interesting, right? Because you get these 18-year-old rock stars and they hardly know what's going on, but then they just get tens of thousands of people at one event, just like having a wonderful experience and just having so much admiration for that person. And they can command the respect of millions, hundreds of millions of people. And so it's amazing and very difficult, situation for them to be in psychologically, to have that much attention focused on them. But so we admire other humans, and maybe we choose to keep our life simple. Right? Maybe you choose to not hang out with like a very small pack, maybe you and your cat, or just you and your books or something. So, we can choose to have a smaller social network or a larger social network, be more actively engaged, really depending on how it makes us feel. So if it makes you feel good to be with groups, you'll try to be with groups. If it makes you feel good to be on your own, you'll try to be on your own. But there's another interesting thing that humans do, in addition to admiring certain people who become influencers, is religion, traditionally, this practice of worship. And so traditional societies have tended to always have some practice of worship. And worship, it takes all kinds of different forms. This is anthropology, and I'm familiar with the Buddhist practices that I've engaged in, and I'm familiar with the cultural practices that are common in the West, like Christianity. What is worship? There's a lot of things that happen in a religious community. One is like learning rules of discipline, acts of service, trying to show a good example and attract other people to that practice. What else? So acts of service, learning, reaching out to other people. I think of one other that I'm forgetting at the moment, but then worship. Worship is like key The other one is just social connection, and then worship. And worship is such an interesting mind because it is the one thing that we kind of disagree with or are very skeptical about in the secular world. That's like the one bit of religion that you don't necessarily, we're a little bit uncomfortable with. So what is the function of religion? The word comes, I think it's Latin. Re means again, ligare, like ligament, bind together. Bind a group of people together again. That's the function of religion. It's about group cohesiveness. But the tricky thing about religion is that if you get into a business setting, you get people from lots of different religions together in the modern world, and then religion can be a force of division. And even if I utter the word, Buddhism or Christianity, whatever, I get a little bit concerned because I've tried to frame this as secular talks because it can be such a divisive topic because it's so tied up in this identity. Well, I'll listen to this meditation class, but I certainly, but I'm Muslim or whatever. You have an identity that's tied up with that, and so religion can become. It's a unifying force. It's a divisive force. But the central characteristic, the defining characteristic, is this practice of worship. And so, what is worship? Worship is an expression of the deepest and most profound respect that we can muster. And typically, it is in most religious practices, it is devoted towards an unseen being or something that symbolizes an unseen being. Who and why is that? Like God, gods, or Allah, or why is that? Because these unseen beings don't piss people off and misbehave. So the key leaders in a community, if you get close enough with them, you begin to see them as ordinary. You can admire these 18-year-old rock stars from a distance, and then you get to know them and you're like, they're so fearful, they're so anxious. You get to know anybody, the most admirable person in any field. You spend enough time with them. And you're just like, there they go again, right? And that's the funny thing. Like the people that we have the most admiration for, their spouses, they give them a good dressing down, right? They give them a good berating on a regular basis. Their kids are tired of hearing the same old stories. And so it's hard to sustain respect when you're really in close contact with somebody. So something like God, right? If everybody says this is all good, all perfect, you can't possibly disrespect, creator of all, well, you just have to shut up and just have respect, right? The Buddhist, these traditional and so the story of anthropology is that people have had lots of gods and they worship, the river god, the god of this river and then that river, but then eventually they get combined into like the water god, and then eventually it all gets combined. It's like monopoly, right? Monopolization. So everything as it grows up in scale is just like eventually you get these monotheistic religions. There's only one God. Stop trying to divide everybody and everything. All right. From my point of view, when these big figures, Buddha, God, whatever, they tend to have these three main characteristics. One or more of these three main characteristics: all good, all powerful, or all knowing, or all knowing. And theoretically, the Christian God is all three of these things: all good, all powerful, and all knowing. My belief is you can pick two. You can only get two. You can be either all good, not all knowing, so you make some mistakes, or you can be all good and all knowing, but not all powerful, right? And then that's why all this bad stuff happens. Or you can be all powerful and all knowing, but not necessarily all good, right? Because you harm a lot of people. And so this is the fundamental crisis of faith that Christians always fall into. Like, how can God be all good? But the main point is that when whatever your beliefs are about this object of worship, what people can believe or disbelieve in the existence of, Allah. But you can't disbelieve that there are people who believe in that. Is that clear? What is definitely true is that there are people who believe in God. There are people who believe in Yahweh. There are people who believe in these things. The belief exists. Does the object of their belief exist? Well, you could debate, but the belief exists. So what is the function of that belief? What is the function in particular of that worship, that mind of worship? I would say that mind of worship is the mind of the most profound respect, the most profound faith. It is a mind that intentionally opposes the perception of faults. And instead of, when you get really close with someone that you previously admired, gradually begin to perceive faults. And that's what erodes your respect. It is the perception of faults in that person. So you have enormous respect, you spend enough time with them, and eventually you're like, okay, that's enough time, because you've perceived enough faults that you don't have as much respect anymore. And so you go off and follow somebody else that you respect, and you follow somebody else that you respect. But what's actually happening is our mind is perceiving faults. But there is a capability that our mind has to intentionally not perceive faults. Think about judging your child's artwork. I mean, there they go. Happy Mother's Day. I mean, as a work of art, if I'm objective, but I'm intentionally not going to perceive faults. And that's what the mind of love does. It's a mind of love, respect, faith, worship. They're all the same kind of mind. They're also a mind of value. They're also the mind of what's your feeling about that piece of art? If you feel it is the most beautiful, wonderful thing in the world, it also implies that you respect it, that you don't see faults in it, and so forth. If you see faults, it means you like this part, but you don't like that part. And that's what a fault is. A fault is just something you didn't like. It was all perfect except for that one thing. And what that means is your mind generally had a good feeling, but it looked at this one little bit and you had a bad feeling. Take that one little bit out. And that's all it is. Perceiving faults is just feeling. How do you feel? What do you feel about this piece of art? Perfect? Terrible? Somewhere in between? Should have corrected this or that? So that's, again, all our mind is doing. Perceiving objects, having an opinion. Perception, opinion, perception, opinion. But our opinion always tends towards everything becomes ordinary, right? It was so special, right? And that's again, back to the story of marriage. They're so special, they're so wonderful. And after a while, it's just, yeah. Everything becomes ordinary over time. All the glow wears off. Now, why is that? Did your partner erode their good qualities that quickly? Have they eroded their good qualities in any objective sense? No. That's just what our mind does. Our mind gets used to things. And once we get used to things, they stop being special. We stop having such a special, glowing feeling about them. We begin to perceive faults when we spend time with them. And the mind, eventually, you come to live in a world that's kind of faulty. And so if you look at your house, it's kind of ordinary, and you look at your life and it's kind of ordinary, and you look at your family and they're kind of ordinary, and all the people you're hanging out with are all ordinary. And it's just a bit I got to get up and do it again. I got to go to work and talk to all these customers and all, your whole world becomes pervaded by the perception of faults. And so what is worship? Worship is it's like cleaning practice. It's just, I'm going to clean out the perception of any faults, and I'm just going to have incredible admiration for this being, or this practice, or this sacred text, or this sacred place, or this a person who is alive and we can see, or a being that we imagine, or a historical figure. We're going to intentionally develop respect. And that's what worship is. How do you do that? You can sing songs that praise that person. You're so wonderful, you're so amazing. You can make offerings, like put beautiful things around to show how valuable that is. You can create a beautiful place, a place of worship, a place where when you go, you leave your ordinary senses at the door and you come to perceive a sense of beauty. And humans have recognized over time, you really need to do that. You really need a way to intentionally pump out the perception of faults. It's like a sewage treatment plant for the mind. And that I believe may be the first time that anyone in the history of mankind has used that analogy for a place of worship. And I don't know where that came from, but it's kind of fitting in my mind. It's like a sewage treatment plant. It's the sense you come to this place and you pump out all the ordinariness and all the faults and all the criticality and all the judgment. Just like within our body, your body's constantly eliminating waste products. Your brain, when you go to sleep, what your brain does is it shrinks. You stop thinking so much, so the cerebrospinal fluid can come in and wash away all the contaminants so you don't hallucinate. And so that's a pretty broad tour, and I'm going to take a few more brisk stops on this tour. So here is there's different schools of Buddhism, but I'm just going to give you a brisk tour through the schools of Buddhism, how they treat worship. The most basic practice in Buddhism is what's called refuge, which is developing respect for what are known as the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And these three jewels are described as jewels because a jewel is just a rock, but it is seen as precious. It is your mind that perceives things as precious. And so you first develop respect for Buddha as the source of teachings, and then because of that respect, you can develop respect for the teachings themselves, Dharma, and then you develop respect for the community that are gaining realizations of those teachings, the Sangha. And those practices of respect, of worship, are in place to help us to learn, because our ability to learn depends on how much you respect the topic and the source. Somebody who you really, 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 really respect tells you about something, you're much more likely to listen than if someone you don't respect. You're not going to listen. So the more you respect, the more you worship, for example, the more you listen. The more you listen, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you change. The more you change, the better you become. So that's the first foundation. But then within what's called the Mahayana Buddhist school, the focus is on this view that every person has the potential to be a Buddha. And in fact, in some scriptures, it says every person is already a Buddha. And what is that doing? Well, that's another whole huge subject. But among many other things, what it's doing is it's saying every person you see is an object of not just respect, they are an object of worship. They are an object of the deepest respect. So we need to develop the deepest, most profound respect we possibly can. And so everywhere within the Buddhist tradition, we respect virtue, virtuous minds, peace, kindness, patience, generosity, wisdom. Those virtuous minds and those who possess those virtuous minds are always worthy of respect. But at some point, you extend this perception to say every being is worthy of respect. Every being is like an actual Buddha. And that even imagining that the place that you are in is not just an ordinary world, it's what's called a pure land. A pure land is a place where Buddha lives. And so in Buddhist artistry, you have like pure lands depicted up in space. Oh, here's the pure land where this Buddha's living. And people are like, oh, that's interesting. But the idea is that anywhere a Buddha lives is a pure land. It's not that there's a pure land somewhere off there and Buddha lives there, because that's, it's the high rent district. The idea is that anywhere a Buddha lives is a pure land because their minds are not perceiving faults. Their minds are not perceiving ordinariness. So they're living in a pure and perfect world. And so there's even entire schools called Pure Land Buddhism. They just pray to be reborn in a Pure Land. But part of the meaning is be reborn in a Pure Land now, right? By changing the mind, pumping out the perception of faults. And so I was pondering that today while I was in a meeting at work. And you're thinking, wow, he was pretty distracted in that meeting. And that was exactly why I was pondering. I was thinking, I'm not really listening to what these people are saying. And why was I not listening? And I thought, I'm not listening because I don't really respect them very much. And I'm like, that's pretty cocky. That's pretty arrogant. Like, why? They're spending their entire lives trying to figure out these certain disciplines. And I'm busy just that's disrespecting them. And I'm just like, such an arrogant mind, such a jerk. I thought, okay, all right, I need to reset. I really, if I just need to train my mind. I thought this is just like worship. Like if you're practicing, if you're sitting down making prayers in the Buddhist context, what are you doing? You're practicing worship, and it's such a repetitive activity. But why? It's because you're learning how to generate those minds of profound respect. Why? Not just so you can do that like 1 hour a day. You're doing that so eventually you can do that all the darn time. So whoever you're with, you're like, okay, profound respect. This person matters. Their happiness matters. Their freedom matters. This person is important. I need to listen. I need to learn. I need to understand. Even if they seem to be a bad person, can I learn from this person? Heck yeah. Even if they seem to be a confused person, can I learn from this person? Heck yeah. All of these people are, at the very least, they're objects of compassion, but probably a lot more. So anyway, so that's your brisk tour through the world of worship. But I'm grateful to have a chance to share these thoughts with you. So thank you very much. I really respect all of you. I have to end on that note.